Okay, without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest speaker for today. This is a man that we've been who's been on our radar for years, actually. Somebody we've had an eye out for, a leader in the Cincinnati startup ecosystem, and somebody that's been a big target we wanted to bring to Dayton. So really happy that we could bring Rod Robinson to the Startup Grind Dayton stage during Startup Week today. Please help me give a really big warm welcome to Rod Robinson. We decided Rod's best side is his left side, so. So, would love to get started. We'll get started with some questions, and then we'll open it up to you guys. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in. But Rod, give us a little bit of background. So you have a supplier management database and platform. Tell us a little bit about ConnXus and why you started it. What was the impetus behind it?
So ConnXus is a supplier relationship management platform. So if you think about customer relationship management, CRM is one of the big buzzwords. You know, CRM is all about helping companies manage their customer relationships. I saw an opportunity in the market for just the opposite, which is supplier relationship management. There were a lot of supplier management platforms, but there weren't any supplier relationship management platforms. And what I mean by that is supplier management solutions that provided validated data, robust data that made it easy to identify suppliers. Believe it or not, a lot of companies, the only thing they have on their suppliers is how to pay them, which is their company name and the address where to mail the check or some banking information. And so we have created a solution, a software solution that really provides a deeper level of insight, sort of a 360-degree view of a company's supplier base. And I'll talk more about why that's important. But the way I actually got started is I was actually a chief procurement officer at a telecommunications company down the road, Cincinnati Bell. And I really started because I was frustrated that my team was spending an inordinate amount of time trying to identify small, diverse, veteran-owned, women-owned businesses to contract with to meet corporate mandates. And so I just started asking questions about why we weren't really leveraging technology to create a better solution and why there were so many fragmented solutions on the market. And so that's really where it started, and that's really all about providing more visibility, supplier visibility, transparency. And really what happened is, this funny thing happened is I kind of created this minimum viable solution, and lo and behold, we landed McDonald's as our first major customer, and realized that we had created something that was in demand, and we really weren't ready for McDonald's at the time. But fortunately, they were a company that embraced entrepreneurs and had a very entrepreneurial culture, and really helped us through the process, right? I mean, they helped us develop as a company and really viewed us as a partner as opposed to just a vendor. And so I'll stop there, and I think that kind of gives you a flavor. But yeah, now, 45 employees later, 600% revenue growth, operating in multiple countries. We've kind of evolved from that point solution to really this global supplier relationship management platform that companies are falling in love with.
One of the things that's so beautiful about Rod's story is that, as you can tell, his background really set him up for success for this company. So you saw this problem firsthand as you were the chief procurement officer at Cincinnati Bell. Tell us more about your firsthand experience with the problem.
Well, it actually goes beyond that. So it was even before I became an executive at Cincinnati Bell in procurement. It was even during my consulting career at Accenture. Had done a previous stint at another firm, A.T. Kearney, and I understood that one of the biggest problems in any procurement organization, especially large procurement organization, is the lack of good data. So at the end of the day, data is just horrible, and it really caused a lot of problems for companies in terms of having sort of an enterprise-wide view of their spend. So really getting a kind of the big picture view of what they're spending, who they're spending it with. So I knew that was a problem. And so when you see companies putting additional responsibilities onto supply chain organizations and procurement organizations, and at the foundation of it is really bad data and not great systems and a lot of fragmented solutions that, a combination of in-house built systems and the result of mergers and acquisitions. So you got multiple systems, data sitting in all these different systems. And so I saw the problem not only as a consultant helping companies kind of piece together their spend and their sort of vendors and, multiple divisions using the same vendor being charged different prices. And so seeing that from a consulting perspective, but then actually becoming, someone responsible for, being a solution, part of the solution, I just saw that, there just wasn't a lot of investment being made. And so it was frustrating for me because I had teams of people spending time chasing down data from suppliers, sending out surveys, getting data back, and then having to collate this information. And so it really created a lot of headaches for us. And then a lot of times the data was inaccurate because, you got humans processing it. And so as digitization continued to take hold, a lot of procurement organizations were being left behind. In industries like telecom, utilities, it was even worse because, a lot of those industries were sort of, last to the table when it comes to back office. There's a lot of investment on the front end, sort of marketing and sales oriented technologies, but when it comes to the back office and operations, we're typically at the bottom of the totem pole.
So what led to you taking the leap? So you see this problem, you've experienced the problem in all kinds of different scenarios. What made you say, I'm going to solve this, I'm going to do this?
Well, I didn't really, it was an iterative process. It wasn't like I woke up one day and just decided that, I'm going to start a business and then created this business plan. It was really a gradual process where I sort of said, man, I think this idea has some legs, an idea to kind of create this, integrated solution that makes it easy for companies to find qualified suppliers, that are vetted, validated. But then I also realized that, I had to keep the lights on in my house and pay my bills. So that's another story. But it was really an iterative process where I kind of came up with the idea, and then I started doing some consulting. So I started helping companies. I actually decided to leave my job at Cincinnati Bell and actually started a consulting firm focused in strategic sourcing. And, sort of what our software does today, I was actually doing that manually. So that was actually kind of an interim step that I took. So I had the idea to create this software, this technology solution, but as an interim step to doing that, started a consulting practice that really helped to build even more credibility in this space. So now I was helping companies, do a lot of the data enrichment that our software does today using manual processes. And so that made it a little bit easier. But when we started to land, consulting contracts with, pretty sizable companies, and I realized that if we had a solution that we could leave behind, do the consulting on the front end, but actually leave behind this technology that would allow them to sort of manage this on an ongoing basis, that's really where I started to see the opportunity.
You'd be onto something big there. So while you were consulting, were you also developing the MVP?
So it was probably 3 years into the consulting practice where we started to build the MVP. And it was really a process of identifying, something similar on the market And so I actually, found since I'm not a developer, so I have the domain expertise, but I'm not a coder. And so I hired a contract programmer to actually help build kind of what that first version of the product. And it was actually a very difficult situation because I was contracting with a company in California, and then they were subcontracting to Eastern Europe, programmers in Eastern Europe. So it made it really challenging to actually come up with that first version. Very frustrating. But lo and behold, we got through the process, and we ended up, it's funny, I was going through the archives and sharing with our team the difference between what our product looks like today versus what it looked like, back in 2011, and it's like night and day. But yeah, we had that MVP, and at that time, right now we have 8 products, sort of, if you think about our SaaS solution, probably 8 products. At that time, it was 1 product, which is really a data enrichment solution. And it's really amazing how far we've come. And, a lot of times you think, as a startup, the software, works out of the gate, and it really didn't. There was a lot of, it looked pretty on the front end, but there was a lot of, what do you call it? A lot of pedaling in the background to make it look pretty. So, customers, pushing buttons on the front end, but then, we got somebody back in the boiler room, right, producing these reports. But that was a process that we had to go through. I think we built this MVP. We learned from customers interacting with it, and that's when you're not pricing it optimally at the time. But I think you start to get feedback, and we really leveraged that, some of those early customer relationships. And, we were upfront. We said, our roadmap looks like this. We're only at this point, but you have an opportunity to help us shape this product. And that's really how we got beyond that MVP, is really just being upfront and honest about, where we were and the fact that we're a startup and, we have a vision, and it's just, I think if you show the passion, I think people will believe in you. You definitely have to believe in yourself before somebody else will.
Words of wisdom right there. So you've talked a lot about some of these big companies, your early first companies and clients being integral to your success. So if you guys don't know, they've got McDonald's, they've got Coca-Cola, they've got Intel, some of these really big name companies for a startup. So what was that process like? Like, how do you go about securing one of these Fortune 100 companies? And what's it like working with them?
Well, it was a struggle to get the first one. I mean, even though we impressed the right people at McDonald's, I'll use them as an example. The one struggle we had early on was, it was me. I had 4 employees at the time, and we probably had $30,000 in revenue, and so the McDonald's contract would triple, quadruple our revenue, and their concern was, obviously balance sheet risk, right? The fact that they would become, a customer that accounted for, an inordinate amount, proportion of our revenue. So it's really overcoming that part of the risk is really having to bring forth, high-powered advisory board, right? Mentors. We were fortunate to get some early backing from investors in Cincinnati. One of my first angel investors was John Pepper, who used to be the chairman of P&G. Cintitech out of Cincinnati was one of our early investors. So literally, you go through all this to win the business, right? Because your product, is what it is. But then now you got this other hurdle, which is, wow, now our balance sheet needs to look a certain way so that we can continue attracting McDonald's caliber customers. That's something that we just weren't ready for. We expected that we would, build up to that, but it happened. But we also leveraged it, obviously, to attract more investors and sort of build on that. But I think that was the big struggle for us is really attracting a massive customer and really not having our balance sheet be sort of right-sized for that opportunity. Because Because then once you win the business, you got to finance it, right? There's work that has to be done before you ever get paid. And so that's another challenge that comes along with that. So, but as we went through kind of the process of landing a McDonald's, we got through that. Whew. But then when you get to Intel, then you start dealing with, you're in high tech now, right? You're starting to deal with internet security issues. And, as I fast forward, like we've gone through, within the last year, we become, SOC 2 compliant, GDPR compliant, because we're safeguarding, massive amounts of customer data. So we had to go through this process. So as we continued to kind of climb the mountain and attract these marquee customers, we've had to meet a lot of different requirements and surmount a lot of different hurdles, from a security standpoint, from a compliance standpoint, from an audit standpoint. We're at a point now where I'm sitting here now and our system could be, one of our customers could be trying to hack our systems. And that's just part of the process. We have to be ready for that at all times. So it's just one of the things that, as an entrepreneur, when I was, kind of sitting there with the idea on the napkin, I didn't think about the fact that, we could be sitting here, 6 years, 7 years from now and have, Intel and Dell as customers and having them, pinging our system at any point in time. So that's one of the big challenges. I mean, that's one of the things that they didn't teach me in business school, and they didn't teach me at any of the accelerators, right? It's those are things that you learn as you go, and you have to go through it.
I'm going to throw out some numbers right here just to tell you the size of the data that ConnXus manages. So their database has 22 million businesses. 2.5 of those have diverse supplier certifications, and over 700,000 are unique suppliers. Like, those are some massive numbers. So how have you been able to do that? How have you been able to grow that database? And then how do you have to maintain it with all these different, top tier companies?
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do that personally. But so the way we have grown our data, again, once upon a time, I used to go and be able to go and query our database when it only had 4,000 suppliers in it, and it was really nice, and I could get all this great profile information. But the way we've done it is because when, not to get into all the boring details, because what we do is not sexy at all. It's managing a bunch of supplier data. But what we do is when we land a customer, let's just say, we land a global, food service giant, right? As a customer, well, let's say they have 50,000 suppliers in North America, and so we scrubbed all 50,000 of those suppliers for various indicators. So we're capturing characteristics about these suppliers, just like a CRM system would be capturing characteristic, data about customers. We're doing the same thing for suppliers, and that could be diversity information, it could be sustainability information, it could be financial health information. So we're capturing all these different data points about a supplier, and then we're basically aggregating that data and making it available for our customers. So like this recent data breach that you heard about with Quest Diagnostics. So that was related to a third-party vendor. So our system will actually, if that third-party vendor is in any of our customer systems, there will be an alert sent out that one of your suppliers had a data breach with Quest Diagnostics. So we're capturing even public information about those suppliers. So the way we do it is once we scrub McDonald's data, think about it as, we get all this raw data.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. You just think about all this data coming into our system. We're matching it up based on certain unique identifiers, and then we're pushing that data back up. But once we push it back out, it's enriched in such a way that it's capturing all this other information. But it goes beyond, when I started the company, we were focused on diversity and gender, identity characteristics. Now we're just continuing to add characteristics because we've really leveraged those early customer relationships to really help inform our product roadmap. So whenever we land a new enterprise customer, we capture the benefit of all of their suppliers. So we have this exponential growth. Yeah. And so now we have all this data that we've built up over time. which has enabled us to rely less on third-party information, because now those suppliers that are in our system, we've scrubbed them, we've classified them, and so now they're incented to keep their information up to date, because now we give them access to all of our other buyers. So they may have come into the system by way of McDonald's, but now they have access to all of these other customers on our system that are posting RFPs, are doing queries, are doing searches, because now all of our buyers have the ability to search all the aggregate total of our suppliers in our system. You know, if they're looking for a woman-owned packaging company in Dayton, Ohio, they can search on that basis in our platform.
I think that's brilliant. You've incentivized your customers to make your product continually better.
Yep.
I think it's amazing.
Absolutely, and we're SaaS-based, so every time we add a new feature, you know, it's everybody benefits. And then every time we land in a new vertical, like healthcare, you know, once you land one healthcare organization, all the others follow, because now we've had to go through all these other, you know, HIPAA compliance and you know specific data security requirements and all. And so we've you know, healthcare stands out, financial services stands out as unique.
So changing subjects just a little bit, you've raised $13 million. That is not a small amount of money.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about that process. How did you fund ConnXus? Because you didn't raise all of it right from the get-go. Talk to us about that.
See this gray hair? That's fundraising. Well, it sounds great, right? It sounds great when you say 13 million, right? But the problem is it didn't come in all at once, right? Had it come in all at once, we'd probably be a lot bigger and growing a lot faster. But what we found is, well, what I found is when you're building something that is, you know, especially from scratch, and when you're building something that is, you know, if you don't do a great job of really describing what it could be, not what it is. When I was going out raising that first money, you know, I talked to an investor, and what they heard was supplier diversity solution. They didn't really hear the supplier relationship management solution. And part of that was, although I had the vision that it could be even bigger than this specific problem I was solving at the time, I think market size, you know, always kind of crept into it. So until you meet that right investor who can see beyond, you know, what you're doing, sort of what's your wedge, right? I think that can create a struggle. But raising money is difficult for any, you know, entrepreneur. It's just tough. When I started ConnXus in 2010, you know, it was sort of a side project for me, because I was, like you said, I was doing something different, and I was sort of playing around with it, and then all of a sudden, you know, attract a McDonald's. So what happened was that first $4 million, I'd say the first $5 million we raised, it came in probably over 4 years, right? Wow. So that was we actually raised, well, part of it was before and part of it was after McDonald's, yeah. So it probably took about 4 years to raise the first $5 million, and it came in sort of, you know, we raised some angel money, and then we attracted a seed investor. So then we sort of cobbled that together and made it kind of a $1.7 million seed round. And then we did another round of 2.5. So as we started to kind of get momentum, so like once we landed McDonald's, then we were able to raise another 2.5 million. And so that took a while, and we just had to continue to hit milestones. And again, this was my first, you know, rodeo, like truly starting a tech company. So like I didn't have the benefit of knowing that, you know, don't start the meter running yet. You know, wait until a certain point in time so you can kind of show, you know, these kind of geometric growth, you know, exponential growth metrics. So it was a bit of a struggle early on, and also, you know, at the time, there weren't, you know, seed capital wasn't as plentiful as it is now in the Midwest and in Cincinnati. And so I think that was part of the, part of the struggle. But as we continue to land, logos like McDonald's, and one of the things about it is when you attract an enterprise customer that's influential in their industry, the referral, process is amazing. It worked wonders for us. So we probably got to our first $1.5 million in revenue, all on referral. We hadn't even hired any salespeople at the time. So that's really what helped us attract our Series A investor, which was Techstars Ventures. And so for the first time, finally, 2016, we actually raised a real round, a Series A round, and $5 million. And, I looked at my executive team, I had only one other executive on the team at the time, and we were joking because we were kind of reflecting on the days when we couldn't make payroll. We were worried about making payroll, and it always, we got enough to make payroll this week? Yep, we got enough, okay. So it was kind of funny, the joke after we had that $5 million wired to our account, I called him up, I was traveling, I said, hey, you think we can make payroll this week? So that was kind of the big joke, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's really hard because you're dialing for dollars. You're spending a lot of time chasing investors, and what frustrated me is I'm spending all this time chasing investors when I should be really running the business. And so it was very disappointing because you had to hear a lot of no's before you heard a yes, and it was frustrating because you're, in many cases I'm probably, I don't know, I was probably a little bit more senior than the typical entrepreneur profile. And so a lot of the VCs that I was meeting with, I'm like way younger than I am and had, no experience, and they're telling me about, my business and, what I should be doing. And you take it and you learn from it. But the one thing I did was I just used every one of those no's as fuel to go and land a new logo. And so we just continued to prove ourselves over and over again. And, we hit a milestone and then we go back. And then finally, it was kind of funny when I finally decided that, I can't control what other people think. we're just gonna put our heads down and crank. And we just continued to land logos and we continued to get referrals. And then it was funny, and this is how it works oftentimes, when I decided to kind of take my foot off the gas and say, I'm gonna shift more to revenue raising mode. So instead of raising capital, I'm gonna raise revenue. And that's when Techstars, came into the picture and said, so you're trying to raise $3 million? Yep. What about 5? I said, oh, okay. So finally, we get a chunk of capital that will allow us to plan further than next week. So.
I think that's so interesting, though. Once you stop focusing on this thing that you wanted really bad, then it came in.
Yeah, I think
that's a life lesson right there.
Yep, it is. I think it's. I think it just speaks to what's really important. It's really about building a business. I'm one. I read the news. It's great. I got friends who are raising a lot of, who've raised a lot of money, and you see the news reports about such and such just did a $20 million round. But, hey, if I could build a $50 million business and not have to raise more than $15 million in capital, and maybe not even raise any capital, right? That's ideal. Not probable in our space, but I think the true measure is revenue and customers. I think that's the key. That's what should be the focus. Yeah. And I think if you focus on that in the business fundamentals, everything else will take care of itself.
So one of the things you've said is, raising money is one thing, but then what happens after the raise, once you've raised, is where, what you said is that's where the real battle begins. It's all about capital, strategy, and speed. Talk to us about how you had to shift, how the business had to shift after you raise these various rounds.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned first of all, it's great when you raise the capital, but those investors that put that capital in, they're expecting a return, right? So it's not time to relax when you raise the money. In fact, it's time to run harder, because now those investors want to see that $5 million, for every dollar they put in, they're going to get 10, in return. So I think for me, the biggest transition for me, kind of moving, to really thinking about scale, I had to think about the many hats that I wore and how I was going to have to, give those hats up. And so it was really surrounding myself with the team of people that can really help me kind of bring my vision and my dream to reality. And that was difficult because, for so long I was involved in everything. It was almost like, man, it wouldn't be right if if we weren't about to run out of money or I didn't have a crisis to manage. But to be in a position now to, hire a team of quality of people who can really help me grow the business and take it to the next level. The big lesson for me is that I realized that in order to grow, I had to let go. That's probably quote that, right? To grow, you have to let go. I think that was my biggest lesson. But it took some time. I just felt like I had to be, it wasn't right if I didn't have to leave vacation with my family to go to, present for an RFP, right? But once I hired, once I made the right hiring decisions, it made my life easier. And then I had to sort of create a new role for myself and new focus, and freed me up to focus more on, long-term strategy and, product, vision. And then, as one of my board members says, always be fundraising, ABF. I mean, you really have to be selling the company all the time, whether you're at events, like this or, attend a lot of investor conferences and such, but, you're always, want to have those investor relations in place. And, we had an opportunity to make an acquisition. It didn't work out. We didn't move on it, but the fact that I kind of had great relationships with our current investors and potential new investors who are interested in the business, had I not given up some of those other hats, I wouldn't have been in a position to maintain those and sort of cultivate those relationships.
Not always easy to do.
Yep.
I've got lots of questions, but want to give you guys a chance to ask them as well. Any questions now? John.
Yeah.
Did everybody hear that?
So the question was, what did we have to give up for the $5 million, and did we need the $5 million? Why did we raise it? Did we need it to grow? Yeah. So that's a great question, and I think the reason we needed the $5 million, and in hindsight, I wish we had raised more, because we were building. We're a SaaS product. So one of the things that we've learned, as we've kind of gone through the process, is we've had a couple situations, even here recently, where we sold our, let's say we sold our customer we took them under contract, but we have a product roadmap we're trying to execute against. So we basically see pent-up demand for additional solutions, additional features, additional functionality. We can't even get to it fast enough. So I probably have $5 million worth of revenue that's left on the table because we have new verticals that we've entered into where customers have contracted with us, but they want these additional features and functionality, and they love the platform, but they want these additional features. And so that's one of the reasons we had to do it. So basically backtracking to when we raised the $5 million, at that point in time, we were really just trying to create our supplier diversity solution, trying to build that out at the time. We hadn't even gotten into supplier relationship management yet, the broader SRM solution. And so really it's we needed the money to sort of build the product ahead of time, and all these different compliance requirements ahead of time. So what we found is that it's difficult to grow organically in the tech space, at least in our case. I wish we could have, but it just wouldn't have worked. And then it's tough to get debt, as a software company. I mean, we did get some benefit from the state, Third Frontier. We did get some money from the state, but that was great runway, non-dilutive capital that we were able to use. It was pretty reasonably priced. But yeah, it was really having to build a product ahead of demand.
Yeah, question over here.
I have a question. I have actually two. So my first question is, when you started out as a startup, and it was like before you gained your first investment, how was it making that transition from having a startup company to having a team, and then to now being like more corporate? Because that's like 3 different lifestyles as an entrepreneur. And then my second question is, since you guys have created kind of like, I personally have a SaaS company, and since you guys have created like a SaaS product, but it's cloud-based, and also it has all that data in it, kind of like a Bloomberg for supplier developer. Do you guys use AI to actually manage those relationships between the customer, supplier, and your team?
So I'll start with the kind of the last part of your question. So we have built in some AI elements into our platform, like a smart search. So we're improving our search, because part of the benefit of our platform for customers is that they can actually search for suppliers. So think about some of the machine learning capability with Amazon, right? So you search for this supplier. Hey, if you search for this supplier, then you're probably interested in this supplier as well. So there are elements that we've built in, and then we're still learning, right? And getting feedback from customers. Your question regarding going from kind of corporate to startup to now more corporate. So going from corporate to startup, that sucked, right? Because you had a lot of resources. I remember when I worked for Accenture, any flight over 4 hours, we could, fly business class and all that good stuff. Well, we don't do that now. I don't have that luxury. No assistant, right? I had to wear all the hats, right? So you fend for yourself, but that wasn't so difficult. That was actually fun, once you kind of got, I think entrepreneurship is in my DNA, so I think you just kind of get used to that. But going from an entrepreneurial startup to more processes, it's kind of a pain. Now that we're SOC 2 compliant, I have to wear a pass now and, scan in, and, our customer, some of our customers in the defense industry, if they were were ever to come to our office and we didn't have that process in place, obviously we could lose our contract. So it's kind of a pain, because now you have all these processes, and I feel like it kind of slows things down a little bit. We try to avoid that, but that's one of the big struggles for me, is as an entrepreneur, I want to create things, and I want to be free and flowing. So sometimes I'll just work out of the office. Like, I'll just go work at Starbucks like I used to. So, but it's a reality. I mean, once you get to a certain point, Rod can't just go in and make a demand that we want to add this feature to the product like he used to be able to do. Rod has to, slap himself on the hand now if he tries to do that. So it's challenging, because I think the fear is that success can also be a disadvantage in some cases, because you start to grow, and then I don't worry about competitors that I know of. It's the competitors who are in the garage or in the basement now, right? And so that's what kind of bothers me about it. But yeah, it's a pain. I mean, but it's one of those things you have to do to grow, to scale.
Did you start up hiring the developers yourself, or did you outsource it initially and then you developed your own team to start coding and so on?
So once I got the MVP done, I actually hired my first COO, and who also was like one of my early investors. And she helped me, we together hired our first developer. And then once we made that, that developer hire, then we entrusted him, empowered him to build the team. And it's kind of interesting because as we've grown, one of those developers that he hired, it turns out that he's actually my CTO now. And that first developer hire that I made, the company outgrew him. So he kind of fell by the wayside, and now this guy, Tyler, is sort of our, sort of chief technology officer who sort of grew into the role. So you really never know, but I've been, blessed because I feel like by making those first, like really focusing and being thoughtful about those first key hires, I surrounded myself with really a quality team, and then I was able to really entrust them to, empower them to build their teams. And so I think from that we've kind of created a great culture. And we try to do this thing where, because that was another thing about kind of growing, is like I remember when I knew everybody's name, right? And so, not too long ago, I walk in the office. I had been traveling. I walk in the office, and we had a couple of new employees. I walk in, and he said, "Hey," he said, "how long you been here?" I said, "Well, I've been here about 8 years." "Oh, really?" Yeah, I've been about 8 years. He said, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then because we were walking out the office, then we were walking back in, and then he saw like my picture on the wall. He's like, "Oh man, So, it's like, man, I just felt bad because I had never met this person before, but that's part of that's part of growing up.
He was probably like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Zach Frink. Thanks for coming in today. You shared a lot of great insights. My question for you would be, how do you manage your time in and out of the office? Like, do you have certain days where you focus on certain things? Or like, what's your method to your madness?
Yeah, man, I that's a great question, because that's something that's been kind of at the forefront of my mind more lately, is my time and how I manage that. And I'll tell you what I do. I'm really old school. As much technology as I use, I still write everything down. I have a to-do list every single day. And sometimes I'll take a picture of it. But I have like to-do lists every day, and then I'll have a to-do list for the week, things I want to get done for the week. And so as long as I'm getting that done, getting things ticked off of the list, like I feel like I've accomplished something. But the one thing I try to do is keep balance in my life, because I definitely went through a period of time where it was pretty imbalanced. And so I try to, I have a kind of a daily routine. I get up in the morning, work out every day, and I sort of use time in the morning to do some meditation and, take in some news, work out, and I always have coffee in the morning with my wife if I'm not traveling. And I find that is, as long as I kind of compartmentalize, sort of my things I want to get done for the week, but I always try to sort of not make my family time a bolt-on. I just sort of make sure I get that time on the front end, because I'm always my evenings are pretty unpredictable. And I always try to make it a point to, get to, my kids' practices at least once a week, depending on the time of year. Now it's summer, so it's kind of a little more free-flowing. But I try to, it just won't feel right. Just like I don't feel right if I don't get my workout in, at least 5 days a week. I won't feel right if I don't have my to-do list and I'm ticking, I get everything accomplished that I want to get accomplished for the week. So I really, try to spend time reading, staying up on the industry, and I try to spend time, I pride myself on thought leadership in our space, and try to dedicate, a certain amount of time to that on a monthly basis.
Good question. Any other questions out here? Yeah, in the back.
Hi, my name is Simeon, and I'm wondering, how did you go about seeking the right angel investors or seed investments? How did you pick and choose, or did they pick and choose you?
So that's a great question. I was just talking to somebody I was doing a digital mentoring session, and we were talking about the value of relationships, and that's something that I haven't talked about, but that's one of the things I see that's really key to any business endeavor, whether you're an entrepreneur or even, in corporate. I think relationships are very important. So I think that's one thing that even leading up to, sort of kind of starting ConnXus, the one thing that I probably did a pretty good job at is just building relationships with people. And so when I had the idea, I had a lot of people I could kind of turn to kind of vet the idea with. And when you think about relationships, think about quality relationships. Like my daughter comes home and was like, yeah, I want, more friends. I say, well, you know what? If you have one good friend, that's enough, right?
Preach.
So I believe in quality over quantity, for one. Because I think what happens is one quality relationship leads to other quality relationships. So I met my first angel investor through one of my other investors. So one of the people that I turned to with the idea, who kind of even helped me think through the idea, a guy named Chris Downey, he ended up selling his first company to eBay, in 1998 for a lot of money. But Chris liked the idea, and he said, man, if you decide to do this, I'll definitely invest in it. He said, but you know what? Because you're sort of, you're starting out, you're focusing on sort of helping companies, with diversity and transparency. He said, I think you should meet somebody. And that person he wanted me to meet was one of his mentors, John Pepper. So that quality relationship led me to John Pepper. And I kind of described to John what I was doing. And John said, I love this idea. He said, a scalable solution to actually do something good, and you can do well as well. He said, so I don't know what I can offer you. I said, well, I think the benefit of your wisdom is first and foremost. I said, but if you want to write a check, that would be great too. And he said, I think I could do both. And so he wrote me a check for $50,000. And so then he picked up the phone and he called Bob Castellini. So Bob Castellini also became an investor early on, and then that led to Cincy becoming an investor. And I knew Mike Venerable because our kids played soccer together. So again, it was one quality relationship that led me to other quality relationships, but it was also relationships that I had already built in the community. So this seed fund, the decision maker at this seed fund already knew me, and he said, oh man, yeah, I remember you talking about that. So it was kind of funny. I guess I had mentioned something to him about something I was thinking about doing, and I didn't even remember. He remembered. But it was almost like it was supposed to happen. But I guess the moral of the story is build relationships before you need anything.
I mean, that's what we believe at Startup Grind. You see our values right there, guys. Make friends, not contacts. So we'll have a couple more questions, but one is, what's your exit strategy? Where do you want to take this?
Great question. Well, when you enter a building, you always know how you're going to exit the building, right? Pretty much. So yeah, exit strategy, would we like to go public? Would I like to take it public? I think that's possible, but I think probably the most likely scenario for us is that we would be acquired by, and this is becoming clear as well, because if you think about what our software does, we complement, existing ERP solutions. SAP Ariba, who is a channel partner, they resell our software now. There are a couple of other key players in the market that also sort of channel us. Jagger is another one. They compete with Ariba. So we're sort of this, we've kind of created this nice place for ourselves in the market, in that we complement all these companies and procurement software providers that compete with each other. You know, we have this large database of, you know, diverse suppliers that they don't have, and we have this data enrichment capability that they don't have. And so they really view us as sort of a must-have. And so, you know, some of our pursuit of another round, you know, we've gotten some interesting inbound interest, strategic investment, and that I could see as, you know, some point in time leading to an acquisition discussion. But for now, we're excited about our ability to grow independently.
Sounds like a beautiful place to be.
My baby.
So for anybody that's been to a startup grind before, you know that we always end with some rapid fire questions. So you don't know about this, but we're gonna ask you some fun questions here.
Let me get a drink of water first.
Okay. Everybody just take a breath. What is your favorite pizza? You're from the Cincinnati area. There's all kinds of pizza spots. What's your go-to pizza?
I don't want to offend anybody in here, but we have anybody that own any pizza places? No, Marco's is a neighborhood pizza place.
Marco's for the win.
Yep, that's it.
What is an up-and-coming startup that we should know about that's on your radar? You're also an EIR at Miami University. You're
Yeah.
very involved in the CC scene.
Shoot. He's going to be so mad at me because I can't think of the name of his company.
What do they do?
Vendor management solution.
Okay.
I can't think of the name of it, I'm sorry.
Are they local?
They're in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yeah. Started by the guy at Kroger, who was an executive at Kroger.
Anybody know the answer?
Vinley.
Vinley. Okay.
Yeah, VNDLY. Yeah, I think it's a
Vendor
awesome product.
management. Okay.
Yep.
Would it work with you guys?
Well, not really. They focus more on contingent labor. So a lot of companies don't have full visibility into their contingent labor. If you ask, you know, someone, you know, how many employees do you have right now? And they may, you know, be falsely excluding contractors.
Okay.
So it's really, really neat. They just raised $11 million.
Okay,
It
wow.
was led by Battery Ventures.
Wow, okay. Venley.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay.
Yep.
What is your favorite vacation spot?
Well, I have a favorite vacation spot for family, and I have a favorite vacation spot for just couples. My favorite vacation with my wife is Tuscany.
Nice.
My favorite vacation spot with my kids is Hawaii with the family.
Dang.
Yeah.
Two awesome choices.
Yeah.
Love it. What is your the best advice you've ever received?
Hire people smarter than you and create an environment where they can do their best work.
Nice. What's something that you know now that you wish you knew at 30?
Shoot. Something I know now that I wish I knew at 30. How precious time is.
I think we all need a little bit of that, a little reminder about that, where we're spending it. Okay, craziest business idea you've ever had? Besides ConnXus, I'm just kidding.
I've had a lot of crazy ones, I'll tell you that. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
it's not going to sound crazy now, but at the time, it sounded crazy. But when I was at Wharton, we had an entrepreneurship project, and one of my classmates and I came up with the idea of, because we complained about the penalties for returning late to Blockbuster, we wanted to create these mailboxes where you could actually drop the return to videos.
Dang. Netflix. You could have been a CEO of Netflix.
Well, you know what that means, though? That means that if you have an idea, go for it, because you just never know. Now, it could have been before its time,
True.
but that's okay. They pivoted,
Yeah.
right?
I think we'll end on that. If you've got an idea, guys, go for it. Please help me give a really warm round of applause for our guest speaker today, Rob Robinson.